Hey everybody, off to our second shot at 8-Minute Mind Shift for the new year, 2019. What I want to do today, and maybe it'll bleed over for the next few weeks, is I just want to share some pretty personal stuff. As Colleen and I have started our year and kind of moved into, we kind of use the flip of year, the transition from year to year as a kind of a, appraisal, revisiting, reflecting, projecting into the future. What do we feel like this year's going to be about? What do we want to work on? What do we feel like, are things God wants to accomplish in areas of focus and all. So, we're kind of trucking along, even last year in the fall, and, we're thinking about what this next season of our life is, going to be about, crazy stuff. My wife and I both qualify for Medicare now, which, in case you don't know, that basically means you've turned 65. So we're both 65 now, and feel like God has made it clear that we, we're not finished. We've got more to do, and we're very, very excited about that. And, we get dreaming and thinking and kind of crunching thoughts and numbers and because you know how it is, life, it all kind of rolls together, the who's, the how much, the where's. So we're cruising along, have a great holiday season, other than, my getting that crazy bronchitis that I mentioned last week. But we're cruising along, and we're probably spending a lot of time thinking about, what we feel like we need to do this year, where we need to focus, and how, what do we need to have to make that work, and all this kind of thing. And the interesting thing about the bronchitis is, and most of you, if you know me, you know my theology about healing and health and all that, and the goodness of God and all. I don't necessarily think God's engineers sickness and all that, but doesn't mean he can't use it occasionally. And we just feel like it's been really, really good that I was kind of on my back, you might say, not literally, as we started the year. Because kind of, if I was going to title the message, the thought this morning, and maybe going into, like I said, it might bleed over in the next couple of weeks, but I would say this, you've heard the phrase, don't just sit there, do something. I would say to you, and I beg you to please hear me. I would challenge you, beg you, please reverse it. Don't just do something, sit there. Don't just do something, sit there. And here's what I mean. I feel like God, I was immobilized in the sense of acting on anything that was in our hearts. I couldn't really make calls. I couldn't even go to the office. I was just a mess for a little while there. But my wife and I had great times with God. We're doing 21 days at the church, and we would get online and hang in there with it, and it's been awesome. We've just got some great people that are sharing, and just little pieces of the puzzle that maybe we hadn't really seen or thought about. This whole thing we're doing together. 8-Minute Mind Shift. It's boiled around that if something out here is not going the way you think it should, you probably need to look in here, and here for the issues. So, we're cooking along thinking about what we think God wants to do this year. And I feel this sense of pressure, this lack of peacefulness, this lack of, a sense of expectation that God was going to do some stuff, but with this sense of pressure that I couldn't shake it. And, as we just kind of sat before God and listened, talked, we talk a lot, thank God for my awesome wife. And, I really, I've told you before that I believe we all have a Goliath issue. I don't remember if you would have heard me talk about that, but I believe we all have an issue from some point in our life, usually in the past, childhood-ish, that Goliath, head and shoulders above all the rest. And if you defeat Goliath, all the other enemies are easier. In other words, this is a strategically important issue, and I believe it's important for each of us to what I call name your Goliath. And I feel like, we're trucking along, doing our best to keep our hearts in the right place and make our plans, from a healthy place. And, and I could tell you all different little wrinkles of how God, messes with us and all this, but I can't remember exactly what triggered it, but I was praying or Colleen and I hanging with God, and this thought just kind of rose up. And here's what I heard in my heart. I am a disappointment to people. I am a disappointment to people. And when I heard it, I realized, what? And I realized, I've kind of drifted back to believing that. My Goliath had to do with my father, and it centered around just feeling like I just wasn't what he wanted, and again, a lot of it was his inability to communicate affection and encouragement, that kind of thing. He loved me and all that. And the bottom line is he was very proud of me. But the point is, growing up, I felt like I was a disappointment to him. So here I am now, like I said a few minutes ago, 65, and I'm finding, Colleen and I are trying to figure out our next season and what's going on and whatever. And I know, and I sense that I haven't been myself. And there's lots of reasons for that. Some health challenges in 2016 and whatever. But somehow that thing had crept back in and taken root again. And when that thought hit me, when I heard that phrase, and when I realized that my heart was saying, Chipper, that... You've heard me say this before. Whoever's words define you is your God. Whoever's words define you is your God. And I realized that phrase was defining me, to me. That phrase was defining me, to me. I'm a disappointment. And the fruit of it was... overstretching, overprojecting, intensified insecurities, intensified sensitivities to people, their signals, their encouragement, their lack. They're wanting me, they're not wanting me. In other words, I really, we throw around the word backslide. It just means to slide back, and I believe we slide back into areas that have given us trouble before. So in a very real way, God used that moment to say, Chipper, you're operating from, listen to this now. Here's the deal. What you're after, what you're trying to do might be me, God, right, good, exactly what I want for you. But you're operating from a posture of unhealthiness because you're not operating from my opinion of you. You're operating from a distorted wrong. Now, what I want to do over the next few weeks is talk about, in a sense, what we're going to talk about is be, do, and have. And we're going to talk about how we really tend to get those out of order. And just to let you know that I'm not like stuck there. How many of you know you can disappoint people on occasion and in situations, but that doesn't mean you are a disappointment? I know I disappoint people in situations. I disappoint myself in situations, but it's different from the thought, the belief, the stronghold, returning to where there's this subconscious low frequency hum, I am a disappointment. And by the grace of God, I feel like we've kind of caught that, you might say. And like I said, probably what I'm going to do over the next few weeks is just talk about all of that and some of how God's leading me to correct that and get things back on balance. And quite honestly, do some damage control on how that's affected me over the last couple of years as I've gotten lost in the busyness of things. So it'll be an interesting time together, and love you guys. I'm so honored with any of you that are hanging in there, and please help get the word out, stir it back up again as we've come out of the holidays and into the new year, and get people back on board with us. And we're going to talk about some really cool stuff as we go into this next year. Love you guys.